147. It is Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. And this is a special, well, I can't use that word, but this is our Workforce Housing Committee agenda meeting. And this was brought to the board through Mrs. Barenborg. So at this time, Dr. Moore, do you want me to just turn it over to Mrs. Barenborg, or did you have
I will,
something to
if
say?
it's okay with you, Madam Chair, set it up and okay with you, Ms. Barenborg, and then turn it over to Ms.
I have one comment to make if I could at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. There was a comment made about us not wearing masks on camera. I just want you to, first of all, I want to thank Nancy and Javon and anybody else that made sure that we were 6 feet apart from each other, provided us with masks if we didn't wear one into the building and wear one down the hall, so I appreciate that. And I also like to say thank you to my fellow board members for being here and modeling what we're asking our employees to do, is to be here wearing masks when we're next to each other and to make sure that when we're socially distanced, it's okay to take off a mask. So I appreciate that. I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Glasses on, mask off.
It's also hard to wear.
It's hard when you wear glasses to
wear
wear
your
that mask all the
glasses.
time.
And I still, to this day, try not to wear the glasses. So I'm excited to set this up and have this conversation. I know there might be a little bit of hesitation when it comes to the affordable housing work that we all know is a priority based on where we are with COVID. But I think the time is right. I think we're moving into a very unique time over the next 2 years, and there would be opportunities, really, if we do start this work now, to be on the cutting edge of being able to recruit and retain a world-class teacher force. And as you know, it is a priority to identify, attract, retain the most skilled teachers. And our ability to recruit teachers over the last several years and maintain employment has been a challenge. Nationally, a high percent, I don't have the percent, it's been in a lot of my presentations, leave the profession within the first 5 years. And that is a significant reinvestment of the training and the development, both of support, instructional coaches, assistant principals, and early career individuals. So taking the time to explore how we do this unique to the school district of Indian River County and Indian River County as a whole, I think the time is right. So in order to set this up, I think I'll quickly turn it over to Ms. Barenborg for any comments she may have. I have some recommendations and suggestions to move us through the agenda after her comments.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Thank you for meeting with me and your team this week so we could kind of go through exactly what we needed to do on this agenda to make it go in a smooth process. I thank you all for showing up that are going to be valuable in this process, so we'll appreciate that. I would like to refer back to when this was brought up. This was brought up, I have familiarity as a former principal with trying to find teachers for my school. I have had the ability to go to even to Detroit, Michigan to recruit teachers. And that opened my eyes up to how can we recruit people that we need for our schools and that have the experience that we might want to rely on. But also, how can we keep people here? Because even though I was able to recruit people from Detroit, from my school, it's hard to keep them here if they don't have affordable housing or they don't have connections in the community. So if they moved here and they had family, then they were able to make connections pretty easily. But what I saw was people that moved here and didn't make those connections with each other, with teachers. And I know that when I first moved, I moved from upstate New York to Vermont, or from Vermont after college to Texas. So I knew no one when I started teaching. And I developed that friendship with the teachers, and I spent 24/7 with 3 of the teachers because we roomed together and had an apartment. So going back to that made me think that's how teachers bond, especially the first 3 years. They rely on other teachers, they form a family within their school, and that's how a school gets stronger, is you have that family bond in your school. So to look at how can we provide housing in our community that can help them with that bonding, I think would be a really unique thing that we could be kind of leaders on. So we have this problem with trying to recruit people, but we have a bigger problem with trying to retain people. Because they can move here, but can they afford to live here, and can they find those bonds and those friendships? So that's why I wanted to bring this forward. There were 2 policies that I made sure that we attached to this, and I just wanted to cover those policies really quickly. Policy 0155 is our policy on committee forming, and a couple things that you need to take away from this is that when the committees of the board shall, when specifically charged to do so by the board, they will conduct studies. So we're asking this committee to conduct a study for us. They're not going to make any decisions. They're going to bring it back through the superintendent to the board, and they're going to make any recommendations, and please undergo some studies, research, please. And so that's one thing I wanted to point out. The members have to abide by the Sunshine Law, just like any other committee, so I would suggest that maybe we ask our attorney to make sure that she meets with that committee the first meeting to go over Sunshine Law. And we have to give public notice, prepare, file, and maintain minutes. So I would like to ask that perhaps this committee's minutes could be included on board docs. That way it's transparent, it's out there for everybody. We're not hiding anything that this committee is doing. Plus, it also allows us to look at the minutes very quickly. Okay? So that's from that policy. The other policy was 9140, Citizens Advisory Committees. And on this policy, it says all appointments of citizens to advisory committees shall be appointed by the board. That's what we're looking at doing today. All appointments of staff members to the Citizen Advisory Committee shall be appointed by the superintendent. So we should not suggest, I mean, we could suggest staff members, but it's the superintendent's decision as to which staff members. We've kind of discussed a little bit of that, and he has some here. But this needs to truly be representative of our community. So we need to think about the task of this committee and how it's going to represent our community for the task that it's given. We have to give it specific topics for study and well-defined areas of activity. So I've asked Dr. Moore to come up with the goals for this committee that we can talk about. And then the length of time that each member is asked to serve. We discussed an approximate number of, I think it was 2 years,
2 years.
that looking at this committee to go for. So not just, they might come up with a recommendation before that 2 years, but we might want to keep them on for after that, because we are also looking at, if we hire people with this idea next year, would the following year show us more information? And that's what I learned as a principal. When you hire somebody, you find out the next year whether or not that person wants to stay or can afford to stay. So that's something to look at too. We also want to look at what resources that this committee might need and approximate dates at which they might want to submit reports. We talked about quarterly reports. We talked about which dates. And then the approximate date on which they want to resolve, we want to have them resolve. Okay, so those are the 2 policies. And I believe Mrs. Rosario has a comment.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Terry. And Terry, I want to thank you for being consistent with bringing this forward to us. This is incredibly important for us to pay attention to, for us to make decisions for the future of our school district, without question. But I did have a couple of general questions, and then I think at some point we'll get to the application because I have some suggestions for the application itself. I thought that we were going to do 2 things. I thought, based on my last recollection, and I may be wrong, just correct me obviously if I'm wrong, but I thought based on our last discussion about this, we were going to do twofold. We were going to create our own committee and then have a representative or 2 from our own committee attend the Citizen Advisory Committee for Transportation and or the Metropolitan Planning Organization, so that we could pull resources or information from that collective, those county-wide meetings, and then our own committee would kind of help us to kind of rein in what's really happening countywide so that we can make decisions that impact us as a school district separate from the other ones. Because I know that obviously our budget is different, and what other committees are doing with their goals are very different too. So I just need a little clarification if I'm on the wrong page here, because that was where I think we left off.
Right. I'm just going by our policies. And our policies specifically say that we can create a committee under us. We can't create a committee under MPO. And I think that you might be getting a little confused by that, because the volunteer application that we have, this is the only application we have. So we need to strike,
Gotcha.
and I struck out all that on mine. So we're going to go through the application and correct it to make it what we want for this committee. Okay? So
Okay.
does that clear up your question on that?
Yes, it
Okay.
does. Because when I saw the application, it totally threw me off that we were seeking one person, one citizen alternative. And that's exactly where I think we're on the same page. So
Yeah.
thank you with that.
And I understand
you
why
for
you
the
might have gone there, because I did the same thing when I looked at this volunteer application. I said, is this the only one we have? And she said, yes. So we have to use what we had to begin with, but we'll adapt this to our needs for this committee.
But I will add, if I can add to that, for all board members and for Terry in particular, she's been bringing this forward, is that I think at some point when we talk about our committee members' commitments, that at some point we stress the importance of attending some of these other county meetings that are already in place, because we can't make our decisions in a vacuum. We can't make any decision for our district without understanding what's happening in the county. So I think at some point we might want to consider the collaboration of that, especially when they're doing their research and what other people are doing and how our decisions will impact the county, how county decisions impact us. So I don't want us to completely divorce ourselves from what's happening. Would you agree?
I totally agree, because I did attend the Affordable Housing Committee from the county. I attended one of their meetings. Was quite informative. I learned a lot, but I also was able to give some information about what the school board's needs were. So they were interested in learning how they could kind of work with us. Now, that's different. We're talking about workforce housing. They were talking about affordable housing. That's two different things. So on here, on our policies that I just read, it says they need to conduct studies. So I think once they do that, then they can get that information that we need for our county. That includes everybody. And we are the largest employer in this county. So I think that we need to be the forefront of this. Okay? So with that said, I would like to turn it, I'm sorry. Mrs. Justice.
Thank you very much. In previous discussions that we've had, I have shown support for some type of workforce housing, also to include home ownership. So as we move forward through this discussion, Dr. Moore, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about perhaps a financial wellness plan for our employees going forward, or some type of a program. When your employees have increased financial literacy, it has great benefits to the health of your organization and to your health of your employees. You show increased employee retention, lower absenteeism, healthcare costs, and ways that you can help your employees through home ownership, retirement planning, budgeting, different things like that. So I'd like that we move forward in a holistic fashion in this discussion, and anything that you have to bring from your experiences in Miami, where you've delved into this a little bit, I think would be great to hear as well.
Just one more comment, and then I'll give it over to you for the goals. I'm glad you brought that up, because yesterday in our conversation, was that yesterday? In our conversation, Mr. Bass asked me, were there any sort of state grants or any sort of funding that teachers could get to purchase housing or get lower income housing or things like that, or get help with housing? And after you left, I realized I turned my page and I had done that homework, and I had found about 7 of them. And I gave that to Dr. Moore. So I'm not sure if you have that, but it was specifically for people to do, to be able to be homeowners. Okay? So that is something that I think should be in this equation, absolutely.
Could Dr. Moore, would you mind speaking to that financial wellness program if you've ever experienced anything like that? Or
Through the chair, the only experience I've had with that is from my previous district was a office that was dedicated to wellness for employees, not over financial, mental health, but it wasn't necessarily anything specific to financial. It was an office that included that as a piece of its work.
So I think there would be a benefit going forward for us to look at some type of financial wellness program for our employees, so that not only are we retaining employees and giving them somewhere affordable to live while they first come here, but that they become longtime community members who own homes and raise families. The other part, Mrs. Berenberg, if we could include in the discussion, is the Economic Development Council and any work that's being done in that way. A lot of our employees that move here have trouble with their spouses or their partners, have trouble finding meaningful employment so that they can support their families. And I think that's also something that the school district could be more involved in helping.
Thank you, and that's why we specifically have some ideas about potential types of people that should be on the committee because of that. You brought up another point about wellness and financial literacy and that sort of thing. It would be nice if we were able to help employees with that sort of thing. That's something that maybe can spin off from this. I do know that we have lost employees because, especially on minority employees, that we've had and were offered incentives, for example, to be paid for their masters or things like that. So I know that those are things that we're competing with other districts.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We are in competition. So whatever we can do here to be a model and to keep our people that we want to have grow with us and continue to live here, we need to look at all aspects. So with that, Dr. Moore, if there's no other comments, could you get into the goals of the committee?
All right, thank you, and I will review some goals. In pre-planning for this meeting, which some of this pre-planning took place months ago, and then in comes COVID, and we pushed, and I'm excited to be here today. Wanted to create a large scope in terms of the volume of work that this committee would do. My recommendation is, as Ms. Berenberger said, this would be a committee that would be a 2-year appointment, meaning the individuals who we agree, or you all agree who will be on the committee will serve for 2 years. The committee members would provide, through my office, quarterly updates to you. The recommended, those updates would begin January, March, June, and August. Each time the committee would provide a report, we could provide additional feedback or an area of focus for them to explore. And I think that's important to note. This is a 2-year exploration to pull together great minds to do some deep thinking, really to problem solve around a known problem within our district. So it is a volume of work that's very specific, but gives us, under the leadership of the board, the opportunity to designate the level of thinking by this advisory committee. So our initial goal for meeting, if approved, would be a tentative for October 2020. This allows us to norm on who the individuals would be, which we'll discuss in a minute, as well as the overarching goals. My proposed goals for this, and really seeking feedback, is to, let me read the statement that I have. I think we start with goals first and then move to who the individuals would be. In order to enhance the school district of Indian River County's ability to recruit and retain a high-quality teacher workforce, the affordable workforce housing committee will explore and study innovative ideas to provide affordable housing to teachers that are new to the profession. The options should include, but not be limited to, loan programs, mortgage credit programs, down payment assistance programs, teacher village programs, land building acquisition, partnerships with private and public housing organizations. The committee will be established for a 2-year period, as mentioned, with the first meeting taking place in the sunshine with a tentative date of October 2020. The board will sunset in October of 2022. All committee members will provide, the committee will provide an update to the board through the superintendent on a quarterly basis, with the initial Dates tentative scheduled for those reports to take place January, March, June, and August on a monthly basis over the course of the 2 years. My recommendation for committee makeup is as follows. As the board policy dictates, the majority of the committee cannot be made up of district individuals. My recommendation in problem solving is that we have the Director of Recruitment, Retention, and Professional Practices on the committee, the Director of Advocacy, Athletics, and Activities on the academy, as well as a teacher who is in their second year. I think that provides us a really fresh perspective as to really defining the problem and understanding the reality of that problem in which we're trying to resolve. I also recommend that we have a representative from the Real Estate Association, a representative from the Builders Association, a representative from the NAACP, and a representative from the Chamber of Commerce. If that is the acceptable makeup of the committee seeking feedback, I would work with individuals to proffer names to the board. Once names have been proffered, I would bring an agenda item prior to the initial meeting for the board to approve the makeup of the committee, the length of time that the committee would be meeting, the required communication to the board through the superintendent's office, capturing all this information that I'm sharing. As mentioned, we will keep the minutes and the agendas on board docs. My staff will facilitate that, so it's always available, publicly noticed. And that is the information that I have. I think that information captures all of the requirements, so I will go backwards and then go back forth. Any feedback or recommendations that the board would like to have as it relates to the goal of the committee?
Mrs. Justice?
Thank you very much. I think that the role of the private sector in promoting economic growth locally cannot be overlooked. So while I think that the committee members that you have included are excellent, I also think that we need to make more of an effort to engage the private sector in understanding the essential service that public education is. And I think the only way that people are really able to understand the depth of the service and the need for education locally in our community is to get involved. What I've found in my work over the past 4 years is that many people do not understand how important early childhood education is, how important it is for a community to invest in those areas, and to invest in an area like this. There will be some concerns by private citizens about affordable housing or workforce housing, and those concerns are valid. There are reasons why they will have concerns moving forward, and I think the only way to really be successful in this is to acknowledge those concerns, to recognize them for what they are, and to include everyone who has different opinions about things. I think of a gentleman who I've come into contact with. His name is Steve Meyer, and he has a lot of information and research about, he's a business person, a lot of information and research regarding home ownership, the importance of home ownership. The other area where I think we need to include people is financial institutions. Have we reached out to credit unions, local banks, financial institutions? Are we including those people who can help for our employees to not only move here, but to buy homes, to get loans, to be able to do the things that they need to do? I've heard talk in the past of financial institutions being able to give money in advance to teachers coming who may need some type of, you don't start getting paid until you start working. So you're coming and you're moving here, but you're not making any money. And that's difficult. That's a hardship. So let's lean on the private sector to help us to alleviate any of those barriers.
May I? You bring up some good points. The reason I think we talked about how to factor in who to put on the committee is we want to be very cognizant of being political in this. And I think sometimes if you have a person that you know that comes forward, somebody else might say, well, I have a person I know that comes forward. So I think if we reach out to groups and say, who is it that you would like to see, that you would like to nominate?
So my answer back to that would be you're taking it, you're looking at this from the perspective or the premise that these groups are not political in nature.
Well, no, I'm not.
Oh, but let me just say this. For example, PTA is an organization that most would think is not a political organization. However, they lobby and do a lot of work in a lot of areas for PTA that some parents who are members may not be comfortable. So I think we have to operate from the premise that most of these organizations that we're dealing with, including the chamber or different organizations, are going to have political affiliations. And the more that we include the private sector in these types of conversations, we will, I think it will make us more successful in the future. And I think there are private individuals businesses, not philanthropists, businesses who are leaders in our community, who are creating jobs. It's another type of leadership. Not only elected officials, right, but business people that create jobs. They are the leaders of our community, and they need to be a part of this.
I think you're bringing up good points that we do need to open it up to whoever would like to do it. But I also think that we need to reach out to some of these organizations
Absolutely.
and say, put it out to your group. Who would like to apply? I want to just be really cautious about the political aspect of it. I just want it to be people that generally want to do this because they want to help us create a wonderful teacher village, employee village that we can do for our teachers and our staff. Okay?
Mrs. Rosario has a question or a comment, and I have.
Yes, I added a couple more comments here because the conversation kept going between Mrs. Barenborg and Mrs. Justice. I have to agree with Mrs. Justice here on this. I think that involving a little bit of everybody, as many as we can in this committee, will only benefit us because we're grabbing onto the experiences that are vast, really, and the resources that might be out there that we don't even know. Providing opportunities or providing suggestions for a committee that I have never been a part of before is often, it brings me back to the same kinds of things that I've said in the past. You don't know what to ask until you don't know, or until you've actually been a part of it to ask what to know. So as confusing as that may sound, the idea of bringing in local businesses or inviting the opportunity for credit unions to be a part of it or the private sector to be a part as well. Opening that up, I don't believe that would get us into any political arena. The fact that we might be worried about politics in general makes it political. And I don't even think that we should even mention it because it's not. We are doing the work of the business, of the board, of the district of Indian River County to benefit children in our school district and ultimately to benefit our employees. And so creating a real diverse committee on this front here really just allows others the opportunity to be a part of something really great. So I think that we should consider those suggestions that Mrs. Justice brought forth. At the end of the day, even though we may or may not bring to a particular organization, hey, who do you recommend as your, possible someone who might sit on this committee? I don't even know if it really makes a difference because at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones to review the applications. We're going to have all these applications before us, and we're the ones for our committee to come to the decision as to who we have decided to be on there, which, so at some point we're going to talk about the actual application itself. But on the application, one of the things that I wanted to add to it was, why do you want to be a part of this? Why do you want to be a volunteer on this committee? And I think we need to add that, because that's how we're going to weed through those people who may have a political agenda that we don't want to be a part of this committee, because we want to be, as fluid as possible, I suppose, as nonpartisan as possible. Maybe that's a better word. I'm not really sure, but maybe that might help us in determining at the end of the day who will be once we receive all of those applications. But my original question was for Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore, can you please repeat? I missed some of those. Your recommendations of who you at the district level were considering or might suggest to be a part of it. I got to Director of Recruitment and I didn't get anybody after that.
Absolutely. Through the chair, Director of Recruitment, Retention, and Professional Practices, Director of Advocacy, Athletics, and Activities, and then a teacher who was in their second year.
Why second year?
Because they've just completed their first year. So the reality of the problem in which we're trying to solve, they have the perspective of living through it in that same time.
So a teacher in their second year, one teacher in their second year might not have the experience that someone else in their second year may have. Coming from New York, if I were a new teacher coming in here versus a new teacher coming from Tampa, we're going to have different experiences relocating into Indian River County. So maybe one may not be. I like the idea of second year. I just don't know if one might be enough. I also want us to consider, once we have all of this, how big this committee might get. And I don't want to get too big because, too many cooks spoil the stew. We don't really want too many heads involved in this. So I don't know if now is the right time for us to talk about that either. I would say and recommend to the board, once we receive all of the applications, let's sift through them at that point and say, how many of these do we want to sit on this committee at that point? That's my recommendation. Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Thank you, and I am collecting recommendations, but let me just keep in the board's consideration that the majority of the staff, of the makeup of the committee needs to be of outside individuals, non-district employees.
Right.
So, and I think in some ways, I agree we need to have multiple perspectives, and some of this work that we're charging this committee to do once the board norms on who these individuals will be. If we add, absolutely, that's why we're having this conversation, or modify, that's why we're having the conversation. But going out and seeking and collecting information. So just because you have one teacher doesn't mean you can't call in additional teachers to gain additional perspective, or other individuals from other financial institutions to collect that perspective. If we went to want to, capture individuals from all areas, Ms. Rosario's stated concern of getting it too large would in fact be a reality, but really seeking out the right individuals who can call upon experts in other areas to gain insight would be the direction in which we would probably want to charge this committee. But I'm happy to make any modifications or changes at the will of the board.
I think Mrs. Zork she had a question.
Okay, so, Dr. Moore, when I was listening to the purpose and goal, it was for really targeting toward teachers that are new to the profession. Is that what I heard you say?
Through the chair, once again, just a starting or jumping off point, but that would be my recommendation, but open to consideration.
Because I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to recruit from outside the state too, more experienced teachers also, who might have problems moving to our area. And so I would see it more of a new to the profession and new to the district, combine that together versus just new to the profession. So that was my thoughts on that. The second question was about the makeup. Typically in committees that I've been a part of, there is whoever the entity is that's creating the committee, they have representation, and you made those suggestions, and then that entity goes out for specific areas like you're mentioning, the realtor, the NAACP, builder, chamber. There are two areas that I would like two other areas I would also like to see represented here is I don't think we can be talking about a workforce, affordable housing without having someone from the banking industry that represents the conversation here. And then another, I think it's very important that we take some input, not only from a teacher that has 2 years of experience, but looking at a teacher that has retired from the school district, who has all these connections and has all these, that is mentoring and a mentor to the younger or the newer teachers to the profession. I think it's important to have that senior voice on there too. And then another suggestion to committees to balance it off is typically you'll see 2 or 3 members at large that just, they apply, and then as you're looking at the makeup of the committee, you choose 2 members at large that can just really make that committee full circle, that you might have not even thought about including in the conversation. So that's my suggestion.
No, I think point well taken. I think banking is the same thing. Mrs. Justice brought up financial institutions, so it could be credit unions, it could be banks, whatever. You know, the question is, who do we pick? Which bank, you know? So I think that's why sometimes it's better to reach out to associations and then let them do that work and say, you know, these are the people that want to apply. They may recommend one person, they may say 3 people want to apply. And again, that gets down to us going through it and deciding who to be on the committee. I want to just, I did a little bit of research about how big a committee should be that is well-functioning. And it should not be, the ideal number is 7. I think more than 9, you're going to get into, maybe they don't get done what we need them to get done. So that's why I'm a little nervous about how many people we put on this committee. Now, we might have 9 people or 10 or 11 people that we go, oh my gosh, they'd be awesome. So I don't think we should make ourselves be put in a box right now until we get the applications back. Like Mrs. Rosario said, I think we should be open to, okay, we only got 5, and that would be a good committee. But then again, if we only get 5 from the outside, he can only have 4 from staff. So there you got 9 people, okay? So I think once we start looking at who applies and whether or not we get a good amount of applications, then we can make that decision of how big the committee should be.
Absolutely, I agree. It's all in the beginning of the creation.
Right,
So,
right. I just want it to be open to make sure that we're representing, like our policy says, our community. And so we need to think about financial institutions. We need to think about real estate people. We need to think about builders, because this committee might say, you know what? We need to look at, you already have land purchased, let's build on that. Or we already know that we have some builders in the area that could take advantage of helping us with this. So that committee can recommend that, because those people might have really good resources that they know about that we don't. Okay? So do we want to get into the volunteer application changes then?
yes.
Just
you have
need
something
a
else?
level of clarity regarding the membership. Is it the consensus of the board to add a member from banking financial institutions?
I think so.
I believe it's important.
Yes.
Thank you. And also,
Dr.
Aye.
Schiff, do you agree? Because I haven't heard from Dr. Schiff. Dr. Schiff, do you agree?
It's consensus.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted, she didn't acknowledge, okay.
and then the veteran teacher, I do see value in that, but it's up to the will of the board if you wanted to maybe add someone from a representative from the teachers union or
I just want to
something.
speak to, I think it's a good idea. I think it's interesting. You know, I mean, we haven't talked about parents, have we? Parents are a big, big part of this equation. So while we, you know, if we're going to talk about teachers and teacher union, then we're going to talk about parents too. I think the veteran teacher idea is interesting. I think it's probably an extension of this committee. I think that your staff in building mentoring programs outside of this committee will be able to support. And I think by choosing one financial institution, you're not separating out the rest. I think what Dr. Moore said was extremely important. This is a collaborative process. It wouldn't be choosing one over the other, and the hope would be when you're looking for feedback from the financial institutions, when you're holding a committee meeting, they would lean on their peers in the community, that you would be able to bring in a number of financial institutions who would be able to address any questions or concerns or offer help that they might be able to give. So I think that the plan, I'm happy with the membership. I think is very thoughtful, and I'm excited to see the work that goes forward. This is a great thing for Indian River County.
I also think that sometimes you can have committees that, you know, when they're doing their studies that they're supposed to
Right.
conduct, they bring in, like this week, this meeting, we're going to talk about financial stuff, and they bring in lots of financial people to talk to the committee and be involved with the committee. So we don't necessarily need a lot of different financial
Right.
people on the committee. That one person, point person could be representing them, and then they bring in those other people. It's just like realtors, just like builders, just like everybody else. Because otherwise, we're going to get a committee of 100 people, and that's not going to function, so.
No, not so much. All right, so as we transition, and I think I have consensus on the makeup of the committee, Real Estate Association, Builders Association, NAACP, Chamber of Commerce, new teacher, second year, Director of Recruitment and Retention, district staff, district advocacy, athletics and activities, district staff, as is the teacher, and then the addition of the banking financial institution member. I think we've normed.
Sorry, did I at one point hear someone mention a union representative?
I did make that recommendation, but in listening to what Ms. Justice just said, I think what I understood is that the makeup is good to go at the 8 in which I just referenced.
We have a teacher on it. You know, if we're going to start putting a union representative, then we need to have, I think, a teacher who's not a union member, and then we need to have a parent. I mean, you know, I think it's, you know, teachers' unions have incredible advocacy. We have seen that in action in the past few weeks, and I think that it's important for parents and the community to also advocate and have advocates.
Well, I think that's why it's important to have a member at large, at least one. Because what we want passionate individuals to be on this committee that's committed to it. And we might not even know what we don't know unless we put it out there that we have this committee, this is the goal of the committee, you know, how will you bring, you know, a value to the committee that maybe we've not even thought about yet. So I think it's important to at least have, you don't ever want to have an even number committee.
So we're looking at 9 people
So,
then.
Mrs. Bennett, may I make a point? Member at large seems to me to be one of those fuzzy political, like, you know, they're a member at large. And I looked it up because you know, they don't have a specific role. They serve as a liaison to the general membership. I'm familiar with member at large with different types of organizations. I don't see the need for that here. I think the committee seems like it has a good group of people. And I'm sure the committee will be open to the input of any community member who wants to come and give their expertise. I would imagine that if someone wants to share their information or expertise, they would be able to do that for this committee. Is that correct, Mrs. Berenborg?
I would hope so. I would hope that they would open up the mic and say, okay, let's, you know, get some input, because this is a big decision on how to proceed with something like this, and I'm sure they're going to come up with some very creative ideas. Whether or not those ideas can be put into motion, like changing the mall into a teacher village or something like that, as we saw in that video that I showed you, I think let them open up that box and see what happens and get input from as many people as they can. And I think we should encourage that.
So board members, what we need, we cannot have just we need an odd number, and I disagree with what Mrs. Justice is saying here. It's not a fuzzy
They're not
person
a
on the
vote-
board.
They're not a voting committee, though.
Well, but my idea of it is, let's look at it as someone that isn't in one of these categories, that's just a community member that applies, and we look at the applications to see which community member that has applied would fit best for the committee.
Would that be instead of the senior teacher then?
I don't think that was.
Because
part of
we're up to 9 with the senior teacher.
The senior teacher was not on there. Go ahead. Mrs. Rosario.
May I?
Yes.
Thank you. One of the things that I think we're assuming right now is that we're going to have an exact number by the time all of these applications come in. There might be a bank or a credit union that might say, we don't have anybody who's interested. We prefer not to be a part of this committee. Not that it's a bad reflection, but it might not be something that's feasible for an organization or a group of people at this time. Maybe in the future they might be a part of it, but we're just assuming that everybody's going to say, yes, I want to be a part of this. So I just think that we should, at this point, just let Dr. Moore go out there, see what we get back in terms of the applications. You might have, the Realtors Association say, I have 2 great people that I think would be awesome for this, or something else. So at this point, I think we have a pretty good indication. I do like the idea of a community member, but, at this point, it's open. Again, when we get the applications, we might look at all of them and say, all of them are perfect, or let's just choose, the 7 best or whatever it is that we decide at that point. I'm more concerned at that time. I'll on the front end of it, I'll just let you know, I'm more concerned with why do you want to be a part of this? So when we get to the application itself, I want to know why this person wants to commit for the next 2 years to volunteer on this committee for us. That's going to be a big decision maker for me. That's going to drive who I'm going to decide on, for me, who I would like to sit on this committee. So some of these other discussions are very important that I see happening between the 3 of you that are in the room. But I don't know if right now is the time to actually delve into those specifics.
Can I make a suggestion I think that will help with all of this? We specifically named groups that we'd like to extend
Right, that's
information
right.
to, right? What if we put the last one as other community members interested, other interested community
Perfect.
members? And that way, let's see what comes in. And so on the volunteer application, I would think that we'd want to have little check mark areas where they can put down Realtors Association, Builders Association, so we know kind of what's coming in. How's that? Okay. Can we get to the volunteer application then? Okay,
Absolutely.
everybody okay with that?
Your meeting.
All right. So at the top of the application, the very first sentence is great, except for it says to appoint to the county citizen advisory committee. So we're not doing that.
Right.
We're going to change that to the school district of Indian River County is seeking a citizen. I don't think we need an alternate because we're looking for citizens that wish to be part of, whatever wordsmithing you want to do,
Got it.
but wish to be part of the Affordable Workforce Housing Committee for the School District of Indian River County. I think we can get rid of all the rest of that, other than this is a non-voting position. Okay? They're making a recommendation to the board, they're not voting for something. So then we can get rid of the bold that's there and replace it with the first date that the committee would meet. I think that's important to put out there, because if you don't, then I think that somebody that's willing to be on a committee has no idea when they're going to meet, when's the first meeting. Am I looking at next week? Am I looking at October? So I think we need to put something on there as to what the first date of the meeting should be. And then that committee can make a decision as to who's going to lead the committee and then when they're going to meet. Okay?
May I ask?
Yes.
Is there something also that we could give volunteers as to what our expectations are?
Well, yeah, I think that we
Roles and
attach the
responsibilities and
goals
rights.
and the roles and the responsibilities to that.
Because I think people might want to.
Right,
So as
absolutely.
we go through the application, my recommendation is we clearly state the goals, the recommended makeup of the committee, and then keep some of the other information, which I know we'll go over now, including why individuals would like to serve, and then from there, submit that application. So I think if, this is just very generic, so a little bit more specific in terms of the goals, the intended outcome, the commitment, the frequency of meetings, which I would say would be monthly, the requirement of reporting through my office to the board, so everyone understands exactly not only what they're applying for, but what the expectation is in terms of the volume of work that will be covered.
And I think it's great to put that on the top of the application, because sometimes you don't look at another page. So I think it is, if I'm applying for something, what is it I'm applying for? So I think that's a really good point, is to put that information maybe at the top of the application, so they know when's the first meeting date, how often am I going to be, trying to meet, Then again, I thought we were going to only meet twice a month when I signed up for this job, and that didn't
That's what they
happen.
told
So,
ya.
and they might do that. They might say, let's meet more, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But I think we should at least put those expectations at the top, when it sunsets, when it begins, and all that. Then I think the rest of it is okay, all the way down to areas of interest. I don't know about areas of interest. Is that something we want in there? Do we need that?
Professional organizations, membership to professional organizations?
Maybe membership to professional organizations. Is everybody okay with that?
I think it would be good to know who's on Rotary, you know, if there are people involved in other things. Rotary is a great organization, and you know, if you have someone, to me, if I had people that were completely equal, but there was someone that perhaps was involved in a community association, that might give them an edge, because, you know, the reality is going to be that the more people are involved, hopefully they're going back out to their organizations in the community and talking about it. So if you have someone who's a member of a Rotary or something like that, hopefully they're talking to the business people that are there, you know, those, just increasing awareness. So I like professional organizations.
Okay, and then I think Mrs. Rosario brought up the question, why do you want to volunteer? So would that
Good
go in the next spot then? So that would become number 6?
Just briefly describe,
Yeah.
you know, your reasons for wanting to be a part of the committee.
And then I think it's important to know how long they've lived here. And number 7, I own a business occupying commercial space. I know they need that for MPO. Do we need that here?
Say that again.
It says, I own a business occupying commercial space within the school district.
I don't think.
Do we need that? Suzanne is raising her hand.
Mrs. Berenborg, questions or statements 7, 8, and 9 on this application are very specific to the Value Adjustment Board citizen that the board appoints every year. So those 3 questions are specific to the statutory requirements for VAB, and they are not a legal requirement for a citizen committee such as you're discussing.
Thank you. So I think that we could probably do away with those 3. Is that okay with everybody? Mrs. Rosario has a question.
Not a question. I just wanted to say that I would think, I'm okay with getting rid of 7, 8, and 9, but I would think that in the area of experience, if you were a business owner, you would actually say it there. You know, I am currently a business owner and this is my experience. So I'm okay with 7, 8, and with doing away with 7, 8, and 9.
Okay. Mrs. Orr.
I would like to see something, just a yes or no, can you make a 2-year commitment to this position?
Great idea.
I mean, if you state at the top that it's a 2-year commitment, then do you have to, I mean, we're talking about adults here. If it says 2 years, do they have to be a yes or
I
no
think putting it
box?
in 2 places is really great.
I am willing to make a 2-year
Yeah.
commitment, maybe, is the better
Okay.
way to state it then.
Yes, there you go. Did you get that, Dr. Moore?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Jeez, we're only on meeting number 2.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Then number 10, it says, please attach a biography of yourself and your accomplishments. I think it's important to have something, but I'm not sure if a biography of 250 words is important. Yeah, I don't want to read through all that, do you? Okay.
No, 250 words is quite a lot. I mean, I think you can get the gist in a paragraph or 2, you know.
I can, Wayne, 250 words will be a paragraph or 2, because I
Not
have students do
necessarily.
this all the time. But maybe instead of a biography, it's a personal statement.
Okay. How about a
like
personal
that.
statement?
I feel like Jackie's question of, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to be a part of the organization kind of covers it. I mean, you know, we're asking specifically realtors. I mean, you're going to know that some of the people are coming from these specific organizations. You know, Maddie from TCBA is going to say, this is, you know, these are the people that are interested from my organization. So you kind of have a,
I have a suggestion. How about just that number 10 could be any other information that's pertinent? And then they can put in anything that they might have forgotten.
Well, I might say to Mrs. Justice's point, as obvious as that might sound, you'll be incredibly surprised how many people opt to not include a part B of the same kind of questions. So if we were to say, you know, please include a personal statement and why you want to join, they may leave one of those 2 out. And sometimes it happens inadvertently, but if we were to separate them, I do like the personal statement or something like that. Tell us a little bit about yourself. But I do prefer to have why do you want to join as a separate line. I know that sounds like it makes sense to conflate the two, but I prefer to keep it separately because if someone doesn't include that, I'm not even going to consider it.
Okay, so how about number 10, we say, would you like to write a personal statement or any other comment that you would like to give? That kind of opens it up to whatever they want to give us. Because people will give you some interesting information, especially if
fine.
they really want to join a committee.
Well,
About yourself, personal statement about yourself. I want a personal
else?
statement about your favorite vacation.
That sounds redundant to me, but a personal statement about yourself.
Do you remember when we went through the
because-
applications for superintendent? You were able to weed out some right away, right?
Yep.
Okay, that might be a weeding statement right there, you know?
going through a lot of, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Schiff.
No, just going back to the 250 words, I didn't hear if that was in or out. I just
Out.
looked at, it's literally 2 paragraphs. I've
So-
actually just done it on a document.
Why don't we say no more than 250 words?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because to be honest, if you don't have 2 paragraphs to say, which you can write in roughly 10 to 15 minutes, 3 sentences would seem to me to be insufficient, though others may disagree with.
Mrs. Zork, did you have a comment?
No, I was,
Dr.
I think that, because these applications could get really, really long if we don't put a limit to that, so I appreciate putting in the
No
word
more than
limit.
250 words, 2 paragraphs. Thank you. The oath at the bottom, is that a requirement for this, I would assume? Mrs. DiAgresta?
It's not a legal requirement.
Okay.
You can have your committees, I mean, if you think back at some of the other committees that you may have served on as your time as an instructional employee on a procurement committee, there's usually some sort of attestation or statement that you make so you can create whatever attestation that you would like. The one that's on this particular document is not a legal requirement.
Okay. What does everybody feel about that oath?
I didn't hear what she said, I'm sorry.
There's an oath underneath number 10 that says, "I affirm that I'm a resident of Indian River County and I'm not employed by the school district of Indian River County." So that wouldn't go to staff, would just go to the outside. And I have no personal gain regarding the volunteer position which I am applying. I think we should keep it. What do you think?
Yeah, I just want to talk about that for a second, because if we're asking financial institutions or businesses to come in, I mean, there may be personal gain. A bank may benefit from doing business, but that's capitalism. I mean, I don't have a problem with people making money. So, in general, this is different than other things we've done before. There's a reason why the VAB board, the VAB had this application, but for ours in general, you're asking people who it's their job to find ways to make money and to build things and to, so I'm not comfortable with that because, while I think that someone is going to get into it for the right reasons, I have no doubt a realtor or a builder or someone from a bank is going to get in for the right reasons. If someone chooses to bank at that bank, should they be held responsible for what might be seen as personal gain?
True.
That doesn't seem fair to me.
True. What if we strike that first sentence and we put in something about that they need to be aware that they're under the Sunshine Law?
I like that, and explain. I think that makes sense.
And make an explanation, a quick explanation of the Sunshine Law right there? That way they know when they apply that they're under Sunshine Law immediately. Is that okay with you, Mrs. Rosario?
Yeah, what I heard you say is strike that first line. I would strike the whole oath and just include the sunshine requirement.
I do like that last line. I understand that I will represent the welfare of the students in Indian River County. In
That's
Yes,
the whole goal.
yes.
School district.
Okay, I see that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I think we're good there, and include a Sunshine Law statement
Got it.
right on the application, and change the mission to your new mission.
Can this be a jumping off point for a review of all volunteer applications? I mean,
I think we just did it. 'Cause
Yeah, we just made a new one. The next thing we have on
Did we
here,
do-
there's two quick things. One was and this should be really quick because I think Dr. Moore and I discussed the reason why. But we have to decide as a board whether or not we want their recording process to be audio or video. And I thought, well, that depends on when they meet because of staff. Dr. Moore, you had a recommendation?
That we would use video. It just turns out to be easier for us. We have the structure in this building already set up, so it's the easiest thing to do.
Is everybody fine with that, using video?
Yeah.
And then we talked about usage of board docs. Everybody okay with that? That way we can access it. And the only other thing was another suggestion was the dates for the submittals and the dates for the committee to proceed. I think Dr. Moore put it out there, January, March, June, and October. Are we all okay with that? That means that we'll get updates from this committee during those months.
And the first initial meeting would take place in October.
Right. Mrs. Rosario?
That was going to be my question. When would their initial meeting take place? My follow-up to that is, when do we suspect we want the applications in? Because our timing for that at this point, if we are at the end of July, the turnaround to have the applications out, brought back to us, we need time to review it and select the committee members before the October. So I don't know if our timing, I don't know what our agendas look like. I don't know what our timing is going to look like. Could it possibly be that their first meeting be towards the end of October at this point, just to allow us, especially with COVID, enough time? Is that a concern?
Through the chair, my recommendation is, based on the information I was provided today, I'll craft the bylaws, not the bylaws, I'm sorry, the goals, the modified application, and craft a timeline that would include the marketing and advertising, when applications would be submitted, what board meeting they would go to the board, and then the initial meeting, which would take place in sometime in October, more than likely, yes, later in October to be that initial meeting.
So the only thing I'd like to say in wrap-up would be that perhaps we can put this, I don't know if we need to approve the final volunteer form. I think everybody understands what we're doing. We're not voting on it. So if we could just go ahead and say it's okay, go ahead and put that out, advertise it, and then maybe on a board meeting in early September, we bring this back as an item to start looking at applications. So I think
Well,
we need to determine what date it is that we want to have for a deadline.
For applications?
Yeah, for applications.
I would like to at least see it. I mean, I don't know if we have to meet to vote on the application, but I would like to ask Dr. Moore to send it to us in email and provide any feedback to him before putting it out, just so that we're familiar with it, make sure that, we've got it all.
Right, my goal would be to provide a outline, timeline, and then in that timeline would be bringing in an item which would verify who the board members are selecting to serve on the committee, which would also scope out the goals, the objectives, the timeline, everything we discussed today. So it's memorialized in an item that would take place in September, moving into the work in October.
So would this need to be an item then that would need to be voted on?
For the members?
Yeah, for a board meeting, to determine how we're going to create this committee? Can I ask Ms. DeGresta? Yeah.
At the board meeting where you select the committee members would be the board meeting where you would wrap up any details that you
Okay.
want board approved, just make that one big agenda item and move
Okay,
on.
so him just sending us an email with all this information is good.
Yes, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
So then can we determine a date that we would like the submittals by? Are you looking at your
yeah.
calendar?
So our last meeting in September is September 22nd. Nancy posts the agenda on the 15th. I would like, my personal recommendation would be to have a deadline of Friday, the 11th, so that all those that could make it to us, because that has to also go in the backup, is that correct? The applications? Okay. So for her to post that on the 15th, I think the September 11th is a good date for that.
Okay.
And that's a Friday.
So I think that gives
September
people-
11th.
If we can get this out soon, that gives people a month.
No, it's a quick turnaround,
Okay.
Okay,
Ms. Hofer.
So, thank you all.
I think that is
Thank
very
you.
good conversation. Thank you, Mrs. Berenborg, for all your hard work in getting that organized and put together.
Thank you to staff. I'm so excited we
Yes.
have new people that are going to be on this.
So, board members, we are going to call this meeting right now, 12:52, and then we are going to be back at 1. So I'll see you in 8 minutes.